Alright, so today I'm doing pinion shims for the axle because since I lowered it, it still has the factory four-wheel drive pinion angle, and when you sit it down and all the weight is on the axle and everything, you can see that the front of the pinion is sticking up. The angle is not matching the drive shaft like it should. So I got these cool 3-degree shims that are full width, and they're bored out on relative to this bottom plate, and they come with these new center bolts that hold everything together, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna see what the old ones are like, and then if I have to use those I can. But something that's pretty cool is on these Beltec springs, they give you this little bitty short, it's a piece of spring, but it's real short, which is cool because then you can unbolt it, take that out, put your shim in there, and then you don't end up with the situation where you're lowering the rear end another 1/4 of an inch or whatever. So that's probably what I'm going to do, is take this out because it's not doing anything but spacing it up anyway. I don't know if they did that on purpose, but if they did, that's pretty good forethought. So I'm going to unbolt that and take the spring pack loose and put those new shims in there. Alright, so I got the spring loose. That's pretty easy. The U-bolts are 21mm socket. You just loosen those up. I loosened up the passenger side, but I left it on there so that stuff doesn't get crazy and start trying to fall off and everything. But anyways, you can see the Beltec springs, they have this bolt here that runs all the way through, which has extra on it. So I probably am going to end up just reusing those instead of the ones that came with the wedges, and then take this out and replace it with a wedge. But I had to jack the axle up, and then take a rubber mallet and beat the top of this to get it out of there, because it was pressed into that hole right there for the alignment, which is a good thing. So yeah, I left the shock on and everything. So now I'll swap that out, put some C-clamps on this and hold it, loosen this center bolt up and take it out, replace it with the wedge, and then put it back in. Alright, so I got them all off, or that one off that I was showing you there, and I was going to reuse this bolt because I liked it better because it was fine thread, but as you can see, the threads got jacked up and destroyed the inside of this nut. So I ended up using the bolts that came with it, which are too long, so I had to cut them off. Just a quick note, if you ever have to cut a bolt off, this is probably dumb, but always run the nut back on it first before you cut the bolt off. That way when you run the nut back off of the bolt, it will straighten the threads up and you don't end up stripping your bolt and your nut when you put it back up on there. So anyway, I got this plate out, I got the wedge on there, and got it tightened down, as you can see. I still have to do the other side, so what I'm going to do is set this down on here, put the bottom plate back on it, the U-bolts, and just snug them up a little bit before I do the other side, like I said, so it doesn't get all wonky. But yeah, so I got it clamped in the front and the back, and that'll hold everything together while you switch it out. These are 3 degrees. That's what's recommended for a 3 to 4 inch drop. And as you can see, if you see, like right there, it is like dead on. Well, pretty close. And it is dead on if I drop this all the way down, and it's because this sagging all the way down is back in its factory location, which is straight, how it's supposed to be. But once you drop it, the pinion is like, the drive shaft is here and the pinion is here, and when you get on it really hard, it twists this axle this direction and really binds that U-joint up. You can actually feel it vibrating under acceleration. So Eventually I'd like to put some cow tracks or slapper bars or something on it to keep it from rotating, but for now that needed to be remedied anyways. So these are the 20mm spacers that I showed in the other video. I had to cut the lug nuts off, or the lug bolts that were sticking through, the factory ones, and bolt those on, and then, you know, the spacer comes with these. So it all worked out pretty good. So there you go. I'll do the other side and put it back together, and then I'll show you guys the exhaust once I get all this done, because it actually turned out pretty good. Alright, so I got the blocks in, the pinion shims, whatever you want to call them there. You can see them in there. Not too bad of a job at all, really. You just take those factory blocks out and put these in their place, and that gives you the 3 degrees that you're supposed to have, which you can see it with it hanging down here, how this angle right here is more flat now, and then it goes uphill, which is well, not exactly what you want when it's sitting there, but once I lower it back down, they'll be almost in line, so that should be good. Plus, when you give it throttle, all this twists up that way, so if you have some bars or something to keep it, like traction bars or something to keep it from twisting, then that's a little bit better. But either way, you don't want to be running down the road with it off. So that should be pretty good, and I will show the exhaust. It actually turned out pretty decent. I actually wanted, it's not exactly what I wanted, because I wanted true duals the whole way. So they've got this exhaust in there. You can see how they had to route it around the drive shaft and then down underneath, which is, they did a really good job. And then this here, they had to flatten it because it was close to the transmission pan, so they flattened it all out all the way down and around. It's hard to see, but then the other one comes down, and I have my remote mount oil filter right here, so then they had to go over top of that, as you can see, and then over top of that cross member, and then this is a Jones, let's see, what was it? It's basically like a knockoff MagnaFlow. It's a straight through muffler. MaxFlow, that's what it's called. Jones MaxFlow. So it's kind of like a Y pipe in here, and then it comes back out. So it's dual in, dual out, 2.5-inch pipes. But here's the kicker. Back here, there is nowhere for the exhaust to go. Once this is sitting down and the axle is up, tucked up in here, there's nowhere for it to go, because I wanted dual exhaust out each side. And so you can see how close it is to the muffler there. It doesn't rattle, everything's good. So they went from 2.5-inch pipes and wired it down to one single 3-inch and went through and brought it out right here, which is exactly how I wanted it, but I wanted it like that on both sides. But you can't always get what you want, so it sounds really good. It's not too droney. It's got a little bit of a drone, around 2200 or so RPMs. So if you're running 70 miles an hour, that's about right where that drone is. 75, you're good. 65 and below, you're good. So ultimately what I want to do is take it out right here and put two basically like electronic dumps in right here, and swap this muffler out for one that's quieter, but to have it to where I can flip a switch and it'll open straight right here. So when you want to be rowdy, you can open it up right there, but when you're on the interstate or whatever and you want it to be quiet, you can do that too. But this was the kind of the best I could do with it right now. I didn't want it to be so quiet that you couldn't hear it, because, well, where's the fun in that? And couldn't afford to do the cutouts right now and didn't know if they would even fit. So now that I see what everything looks like, I think that they'll fit, and that's probably what I'll end up going with later on. So anyway, yeah, there you go. Had to take it back loose right here, which I have a skid plate that I'm getting ready to put back on. This Blazer had the factory skid plates. It's got one right there, and it has one right here, which is currently laying over there behind that cool scooter that I ride around in here in my spare time. And it's going to go back here. So yeah, I'm going to put the wheels back on it, set it back down, get up underneath and look and see what that looks like. And there you go. There's the finished product. That looks a lot better. Of course, once you give it some throttle, it's going to twist up, but that's still a whole lot better than it was. So, alright, so I'm going to take it out for a spin after changing that pinion angle. But I figured I'd try to get a little exhaust clip in here, a better one anyway. So, anyway, I'm going to set it down here, see how it goes. So, sounds pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. So, sweet.